Oh, it's really easy to go from a good mood to to just whatever this is. Just paralysis, and I think it's just a trauma response, and so I realise I'm not gonna get anywhere with court. It doesn't matter. They're not gonna obey the law, and I'm just gonna get more and more scorn, contempt, abuse. It's so illegal. It's so fucking illegal. I can't waste any more time. Like I said, when I was in a good mood yesterday and I was chuckling. God, I'm in a this is I don't know what they call it. Like when you have PTSD and you're triggered, it's like you're triggered into what? Like what? We have so much terminology, but we don't say what that is. Like I'm triggered, but I'm not into what? Into what state? There should be an overarching thing, like it can be fight, flight, or freeze, or whatever. But more than that, it's because it's your body, and like I've got chest pains. And it's the chest pains that I would used to think would be like a heart problem. My mouth is dry. I've got brain zaps in my head. And I just feel utterly frozen. And so the frozenness is obviously a tertiary response, or maybe a secondary response, I'm not sure. It's not accurate to say that I'm in a freeze situation because my body is reacting, and PTSD, whatever it triggers, is a physiological state. I don't want to talk on my phone, but it's really important that I do this because as I've said, I can't just record when I feel like I've actually got to put a lot of effort into the drudgery of recording the things that I can't be bothered or that are so fucked up I can't even make sense of them. And I've also got to make a real effort to record myself when I'm having, well, I suppose it's a kind of a panic attack, but that doesn't really cover it. I need to investigate PTSD for the language a bit more because no one seems to understand it or take it seriously. They've got to be gaslighting me, but yeah, so I've got those electric zaps in my head. That's a stress response. My GP reassured me it's not having a stroke. I'm not having a heart attack. The fight, flight or freeze, and so this soothes me. So it's good that it soothes me because that's one, and I've taken a couple of clonazepam. It's good that I haven't kicked in yet though. It's good to have something that I can do that soothes me, and because I don't have any friends, it has to be talking to my camera and then putting it on YouTube and whatever, this feeling that it's being heard by somebody, but the process is soothing. And unfortunately what happens then is you get the observer's paradox, or something very similar to it, where I'm self-soothing by talking to something that in my subconscious feels like is a sympathetic person. But it goes through stages, and when I come out of the freeze, I will start to cry, and I don't think it's a sign of recovering. I don't think it's therapeutic. I just think it's the next stage of the trauma response. You know, when you unthaw your hands and then you reveal the frostbite or whatever, you know, it's like that. It's like unfreezing doesn't mean everything's okay. Anyway, curiosity got the better of me, and I did open the disclosure on my phone. I can't, you know, like, each of my elderly devices has different capacities and at different times, and I wouldn't attempt to open a big PDF on my computer, but you know, I've got a little screen here. I've got a 6S Plus, so that's quite a big screen, which I found meant that it could take over from my elderly iPad, which I bought second hand for my dad when he was dying, and he was in a rest home, and he couldn't use a computer, so I got him an iPad, and he really didn't understand. He was a Microsoft guy, and the touch screen, you know, whatever, it doesn't matter, but that was the year I started dialysis, so it was 2015, he died in 2015, so that's an 8-year-old, yeah, 8-year-old iPad. And so when I got, on my 40th, I got that, my mum bought me that 6S Plus, and the Plus is great because it meant that I could work on it in a very similar way that I could work on my iPad, because I had a little 4 cell phone that I'd got from a second hand. Like, I don't buy new phones. That was the only new phone I'd had on my 40th, and that's nearly 7 years ago. And I had retired that, but this phone's quite fucked as well, and it's second hand, and it's an 8. And I meant to get an 8 Plus, but I didn't, and so it's a smaller screen. And that phone just heats up, like it will just almost burn my hand, and I often have to just put it in the freezer. And as I say, it fizzes and the screen shakes, and I don't think it's safe to use. I've heard of, I mean, these are news stories, these aren't just rumours, you know, where someone had something charging beside their bed and it blew up in their fucking face. You know, like, phones are anything with electricity and a circuit board, you know, well, anything with electricity, yeah, you've got to be really careful. So no, police, CJSU, that does not count as being able to receive a document by being able to open it on my tiny iPhone. Like, what can I do? Like, I can't. You can do a little bit, but they're not. They are computers, but they're not computers like we know. Like, they're not mini. You know, laptops are kind of mini or transportable desktops. They're the same. They work the same. They have the same operating systems. But smartphones have different operating systems, and you can't do as much. And I can painstakingly divide a PDF up into its constituents, but it's painstaking, and it's not appropriate. It's just not appropriate for me to do what PPS is doing with a team and multiple computers, probably multiple screens, all sorts of fucking stuff on a fucking iPhone. But I had a look, and it was just really triggering. And I don't really understand a lot of the police documents, but it looked like a list of offences that I had not committed. I just crazy shit in places I've never been. Like, there appears to be an offence committed on 140 Sherborne Street. I'm on 100. Oh, I wonder if that's... I wonder if that's the... Surely that's not their office down there. I mean, I have already recorded that, and I've got the... You know, I've already got quite a lot of evidence about that. But anyway, just places that I've never fucking been, you know, and things that I have never done, and it's ridiculous because the judges know that I don't have a criminal history, and yet police are insisting that I have a criminal history, and they fuck around with I think it's called an NIA. It's a national something number, and police do have access to them, but it's very, very, very serious. It's like fucking around with someone's social security number, you know? I mean, for Americans. I think a social security number, it's a bit like an IRD number, but I think it's more than that. Like, I think it's more encompassing. I think it's a bit more like Real Me, where it's like police cannot tinker in your NIA and just add things and subtract things as they like. So this is where the corruption comes in. It's a very, very, very... I don't know if you need any particular security clearance to add things to someone's NIA, but it's right up there. Like, NIAs do not belong to police. I think they belong to probably internal affairs, or, you know, like the GCSB will probably have access to them. You know, constables can't fuck around with those things, and they have. But I know this from the past, what happened to me in Wellington with the corrupt cops. But it's just too much. Like, a whole cascade of things happens when I open. You know, that video that I filmed when I ventured out, as I really wanted to venture out into St Albans and back to closer where I used to live and walk and, you know, see Tommy the cat, and my trauma video from that, and then the recovery video. Like, that was just so intense. And, you know, like, part of being back here is just, you know, giving myself a bit of exposure treatment. You know, like, not too much, not too little, and it was a really big deal for me to first go to that op shop, you know, in the same building that, you know, Homewood Property Management is in. But there's other things on there too. There are restaurants and stuff. Like, it's a mall, you know, it's not, you know, but you know, there's not really, I can't go into the op shop without passing, and you know, and I'm just, I don't like going that way. And if I ever have to go to the shop, you know, the Fresh Choice little supermarket, I'll never go that way. I always take the longer way. And if I get on the bus, I'll get off the bus in a way that I walk through behind it and back. But I like going to that op shop, and then other times, if I catch the bus from the BP station to go to Papanui, I make myself go there now because it's a long enough walk as it is from home. And there's not a hell of a lot of point in going to catch the bus in an awkward place, because I can't get off with my supermarket stuff at an awkward place. You see my video the other day getting off the bus, and, you know, like, really, really taking a lot out of me to carry things back in a trolley and stuff. And I have been getting deliveries, but I can't afford those all the time. And so I've been adjusting. I've been trying to do a bit of I mean, I'm not a trauma-informed therapist, but there's no way I trust anyone else to lead me through it, because everyone else will just abuse me further. And it won't necessarily be with any malice, but it's with ignorance, and it's with pig-headed ignorance where they will argue with me about who I am. And those people are pieces of shit. I don't care if they genuinely think that their method of, I don't know, what are they, the Gestalt, is that what it is when you challenge people's beliefs? I don't fucking challenge my fucking reality, And this has been a criticism of the family court where, often often in a marital separation, or especially if kids are involved, one or other party has really had the raw end of the deal. I believe that it's mostly men, but it can be women as well. And I'm not taking sides in the gender war. It's not about male or female. It's about who's been abused by somebody else. And I just mentioned men because men overall get just less sympathy and trust than women do, so they end up just being bigger casualties. And men's rights activists, and particularly and MGTOW are not men's rights activists. Well, not in its essence. MGTOW just means men going their own way, so they just try and disengage from the female world as much as they can. They're not. A lot of them don't get the spirit of that, and they keep whining and whining and whining to women, and it's like, I thought you're going to go your own way, mate. But I can totally understand why men, if you've been abused, and I would assume a lot of MGTOW have been abused, so they've become MGTOW. They're not pleasant people to deal with if you're a female. They don't trust anti-feminist women. They think we're fakers. They think we're the ultimate, evil seductresses, the Black Widows, pretending to be unicorns, which is the almost impossible to find decent woman. And I'm like, dude, I'm sympathetic, but this ain't my fucking thing, But you can understand why the justice system has turned men away from wanting to become involved with women and wanting to share property with them, and certainly wanting to have children with them. A lot of men that are tagged deadbeat dads, and there are deadbeat dads, that's for fucking sure, but a lot of them are just, they can't cope anymore, and they just have to walk away from their kids because fighting to see them and being accused of all sorts of things is too much for them to cope with. Especially when the mothers turn them against them. And I've heard both sides of some stories, and I'm not talking about necessarily being credulous about any party's story, which is awful for the traumatised party. It's just that I know the dangers of that paradox, you don't want to challenge the beliefs of a traumatised victim, but you also don't want to support an abuser pretending to be the traumatised victim either. It's a real doozy, and the justice system is not built for handling that kind of thing, because it's a real twisty, turny kind of, it's like a Mobius strip, that one. And the justice system hasn't even got around to basic understanding of the impacts of victimhood. And so a lot of people are just thrust into family court, lengthy family court disputes where they've got legal abuse, which can be financial abuse, but also just sitting there and facing their abuser and listening to, even just facing your abuser is a terrifying thing, even just seeing them, even seeing a picture of them. And I'm going into the same situation. There is no difference between family violence. There's all these attempts, as I've said, to rename family violence into a terminology with a definition that describes what it really is. And as I've said, they've missed the wood for the trees. It's really just anyone that you can't escape from in a sort of a domestic sort of scenario. And I think in a way they've kind of taken the wrong route by expanding it to mean family that you don't live with. Because I think the point of, it used to be called the Domestic Violence Act, and I think it was the something else. I think there's something about domestic abuse that's very special for victims, and not special in a good way, and it's because it's happening in your home and you can't escape. And I think that can be expanded to people who make you lose your home, because that's a horrible abuse, and that's what my victimisers have done to me. They were abusing me in my home, and they abused me by making me homeless. And making someone homeless doesn't just mean that they can go and move somewhere else. It means that now all of a sudden they have a gap in their demonstrable reputation, and they've basically destroyed my ability to have a home, which is a very, 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 very serious conglomeration of offences that amounts to just torture. It just amounts to destroying someone's life. And to anticipate seeing them being sympathised with by the Tenancy Tribunal, including an adjudicator who was looking sympathetically at Caroline Register, as she said that my suicide attempt video that I'd posted harmed her business because of its association with other videos I'd made about the abuse that I had been receiving from them in police inaction. Like, it harmed her business. Like, she was putting on the harmed party, and the adjudicator, Robin Merritt, was looking sympathetically at her, and I was the bad guy. Like, this is how fucking insane the justice system is. And I wrote last night in a whole flurry of emails that I'd forwarded on to a bunch of police people to show this is why I need my fucking evidence sent to me in a form that I can cope with. Not even emotionally, but just technologically. What was I going to say? It's just so... It's so incredibly complex, and abuse, like... Oh, that's right, I said I expected I had no idea that the criminal court judges would be worse than Tenancy Tribunal adjudicators. I can't believe it, but it's true. And the reason I raised the family court problems, I've never been through that, but I've heard about it, and my GP, when I talked about ages ago the kind of abuse I was getting in the Tenancy Tribunal, and her efforts to write to them with a little bit of, legal kind of guidance from the Disability Law Centre, just about, because you've got to write a medical letter that Well, you'd think that just a medical letter from a GP and a psychiatrist and stuff would do the trick, but, you know, it was like, okay, we've got to mention particular sections of the Human Rights Act, and Tenancy Tribunal completely ignored the Human Rights Act. I completely ignored it, and now, so I thought, oh, they just need sort of some education about it, and they need to have those specific sections set out. So we'd given them the specific sections for her to quote in the letter. Caitlin has these disabilities under section, I think it's 21 or 21A of the Human Rights Act. Didn't make a dent, didn't make a fucking dent, and now I realise the problem is not that doctors aren't writing letters that are technically legal enough, because that's not their job, because they need to slot into what the judge or the adjudicator's legal knowledge is. It's like, oh, okay, we can't put people who are disabled or very unwell through through the mincer, but they don't seem to care about that. So there's no point in pointing out where the law is being breached, or where the law needs to be minded in the first place, because they just don't, they won't speak that language. Judges will not speak the language of the law. And by speaking the language, I don't mean literally, I just mean they don't operate in the legal paradigm. They don't, let alone a justice paradigm. They don't operate in a legal paradigm. And I don't know who, is it the Governor-General who nominates judges? I don't know, but it's like the blind leading the blind. Surely you need to go through rigorous fucking testing. To be an adjudicator, I read you had to go through, and that's just a lawyer, to be like a tribunal adjudicator, you just need to have practiced law for 5 years and have have reached some sort of milestones in your career, which means fucking nothing. And to be a judge, it would be a lot more than that, but I think you need to be recommended, and I don't know what kind of milestones you need to reach. But it's like looking at the outcome going, oh yes, well they did so many cases, but it's just like, well, how did they do those cases? By fucking, curb stomping fucking victims. It's like, oh, how many arrests have been made? Well, it doesn't show that the arrests were legal, and I heard something, because I belong to a few, I've had to sort of, it's good, I find more and more sort of support groups on Facebook, and some of them are directly for beneficiaries and legal, victims of legal abuse, and kind of a whole bunch of sort of stuff that nothing quite hits the spot, but I can kind of bumble together, and someone made a claim and it's not substantiated, but I would not be fucking surprised that ISCMs, Integrated Services Case Managers at MSD, are rewarded for the number of applications for help that they decline, even though they're mandated to offer wraparound support in any way that they can by pulling in any number of connected agencies. And through the forest of lies that I've been walking through with them, I would believe it, even if it's not true. It would be certainly, if they read it, they'd go, oh, that's a fucking good idea. So yeah, I'm coming out of it now. But it's the paralysis. The paralysis is just horrific. And the paralysis has a lot to do, again, it's just with the stuff. It's like, I feel like I can't even start to try and sort my tech problems and the legal stuff and everything until my stuff's sorted. And it's just like this. And it's like, it's not me. This is not me. This is trauma. It's trauma. It's like, And it's a circular problem. It's like I don't know where to start. And every time I say I don't know where to start, it's funny. I do have a PTS trigger. That is a PTS trigger to even say that for me. It is really weird. And when I talk about triggers, I'm not talking about the fucking snowflake, safe spaces triggers. I'm talking about PTSD triggers. It is a PTSD trigger for people to tell me this is how you do organisation and productivity and motivation. It's like, I am the queen of productivity, motivation, and organisation. I have a fucking cognitive injury called post-traumatic stress disorder. Our brains have changed. We're in a different kind of survival mode that you can't even comprehend. And ADHD doesn't help that. I don't think it's ADHD, but it certainly doesn't help it. It's just that frozen, I can't cope like this, and I can't move forward with it like that. I really can't sit down and work with this. So I'm trying to unfreeze myself. You know, like Han Solo, you know, trapped in that bronze kind of thing, you know, like I'm trying to like crack myself out of that and actually be able to function again and actually just see things in full perspective. Okay, those things in the background, these are in the foreground. And the reason I've got clothes fucking everywhere is because I was set to move into a room that I got offered, and then the offer was retracted. And what I started doing was just by washing all of the clothes that were kind of halfway between clean and dirty, you know, the cheered robe stuff. I just thought, because I was really paralysed by all those clothes, I was like, what do I do with them? What do I do with them? I didn't feel like packing them half clean and half dirty. It just didn't feel right. So I thought, do you know what I'll do? I will stop agonising over this and I'll just clean them all. So I washed them all, even if it was just sort of like a rinse cycle. It's just to, because there's some things, you know, I've worn like once or twice and I don't hang those up. I leave them on my intermediary thing so I can wear them another few times, and then, you know, it's like a conveyor belt. And I do wash my clothes too frequently. For the environment, but whatever, it's psychological for me. And as I've said before, I'm not going to start fucking making really difficult self-improvement things when those things are rooted not just in habits but in actual disorders. Now, that doesn't mean that I make excuses for my disorders. I don't. I work really, really fucking hard at them. But you cannot judge the outcome from the effort. I have obsessive compulsive disorder. That was my first diagnosis, my first correct diagnosis. I have ADHD, and I have autism, and I have PTSD and acute stress. And working on the OCD, which I've been doing for fucking years, decades, because the psychiatrist, it was back in the day where, yeah, sure, they'd medicate you, but they would also teach you how to, you know, like obsessive compulsive disorder is responsive to effort in a way that ADHD isn't. I don't mean that you can't change your lifestyle and your environment to improve the impact or lessen the impact of ADHD on your life, but what I'm saying is the ADHD itself does not respond to effort. It's physical. It's in your brain, but your brain isn't just a bunch of emotions, it's neurology. So you can do a lot in your lifestyle to work with your ADHD, you know, but that's not actually changing your brain structure, whereas you can change your brain structure with OCD, and that's how I learned a lot of self-control. And that's when I learned you can change your thoughts, and I'm actually quite good at changing my thoughts, especially when it comes to just turning my it's amazing, like, you know, that whole thing was like, oh, you think you can change your thoughts? Well, okay, try not to think of a fucking pink elephant. Well, actually, that's true, but they're forgetting that you don't win marathons after your first, you know, run around the block, right? You have to work on it over time, whereas working on autism over time doesn't make any fucking difference because it's a developmental disorder. Again, you can work on masking, but masking has become incredibly controversial these days. And I'm not sure where I am in the controversy. I'm just stepping aside, sort of watching with interest. Some of it gets a bit self-entitled to me, but some of it's sort of quite relevant that maybe we shouldn't mask, because there appears to be a lot more people with autism than we used to think, and the idea is that maybe it's not a developmental sort of retardation, but actually an adaptive response to an evolutionary adaptation. And when people go, oh my God, everyone's got fucking ADHD these days, you know, it's like, well, actually, maybe it's not really that rare. It's just that there are so many people masking, and a lot of us, as I've discovered, have been incredibly judgmental about other autistic people before we were diagnosed, because God knows why. I guess we're not any. That's why I'm reasonably tolerant of. I kind of feel like neurotypical is a bit of a slur, but anyway, neurotypical. I mean, sure, neurotypical. I think that works as a just a generic sort of term if we take the kind of the connotation out. You know, like, we've all got blind spots, and you know, like ADHD, the expression of ADHD and the expression of autism can cross over with the expression of narcissism, or all kinds of things that are either not mental illnesses, disabilities, or you know, other things that people can't really help. Surely you can't help having narcissism, because yes, you can. There are some people who do recover, and there's a guy on YouTube who apparently is in recovery. He goes under mental. He's got a play on words. Anyway, whatever. But as the age-old saying goes, you know, you can't change unless you want to change. You won't change unless you want to change, and narcissists tend to not want to change. So they're not going to put any effort into changing because they're perfect as they are, you know. So, yeah, in theory they can change, but in practice they won't. And so in a sense, in theory, they can't. So I don't know, but whatever it is, they're not benign. You know, they're social. The people with ADHD and autism can harm other people. We can. We absolutely fucking can. And we do, because of our disorders. So I don't know where that leaves us in the moral responsibility category, but we have some responsibility to try. Whereas we don't have that intent. It's not to say that we don't have other characteristics as well. I mean, you can have narcissism and ADHD, narcissism and autism. I'm not saying that we're just misunderstood innocence. Of course, we have other characteristics and we can do horrible things on purpose or we can be negligent and whatever. But I'm saying that the harm that we do because of our disorders is not a morally culpable harm. But I do feel that we are morally responsible for doing what we can to lessen any negative impact on other people where the other person really has no responsibility to receive our output. So that's where I kind of diverge a little bit in the debate about whether or not masking is the old form of tying a left hand writer's arm behind their left hand behind their back, making them the right hand. I don't know if it's that or if it's just making someone do a bit of rehab. I mean, I'm just not sure. But one thing is for sure is that we don't mean harm. Narcissists and sociopaths and so forth mean harm, and whether or not, and then you get into this very weird kind of free will philosophical debate. And Sam Harris gets into that. He gets right in there. He doesn't wade in. He just jumps into the middle of the Pacific Ocean. He jumps into the fucking Mariana Trench on it. And because he's a neurologist as well as a philosopher, he's quite good at moral philosophy and moral responsibility, and how responsible is a psychopath, which is another category altogether from sociopathy. How responsible are they? Well, at the end of the day, does it matter if they're causing enormous harm on purpose? Torts mens rea. Sometimes one matters more than the other. But in my case, so my computer can't handle the documents, but when I try to look at them, just to get a bit of a heads up, I go into a kind of a meltdown. And I might have said over a YouTube video, but I certainly wrote to CJSU back in late last year when I was in Backpackers, that I opened this disclosure that was lies. It was about that one of those fake arrests, and it was fucking lies. And I went into, almost immediately, I felt like I was having sepsis, because sepsis hits you like a thunderclap. And I was out at my storage unit near Sockburn on Blenheim Road, and it was happening then, and I had to get back to the Backpackers, and I was like, oh my god. And I just went back to the Backpackers, which was Urbans, and I just had to go to bed, and I was just like wiped out, and I had I didn't have a thermometer, but I was sweating, like I had a temperature, I was cold, and I had to move the next day to a different Backpackers I forget where at the moment, but not too far away, but still like a pretty hefty bus ride with my gear. And I was like, oh my god, and I was wondering if I was going to die overnight, and because I've had sepsis, and it felt a lot like sepsis, and it turned out what I was having was a psychogenic fever, and that's not psychosomatic, it's psychogenic, so it's a real fever, but it's caused by a massive sort of psychic shock, and it was just an extreme trauma response where I was genuinely sick. I was genuinely very, very unwell because of the traumatic response I'd received. And these are not things that judges in the criminal court or any court appear to. They'll just abuse you. They'll growl and snarl at you. It's amazing. It's amazing. These people are criminals. And, as I've reminded police, ignorance of the law under the Crimes Act is no defence. So there's no defence for these judges. They are breaking the law, the criminal law, egregiously. And Ignorance is no defence. And it's a kind of ignorance that is not, it's not innocence. It's their job. It's their job to know the law. They are in control of so many people's lives. That is the one thing. It's like that meme. You had one job. So I've come out of this now. I have to say I don't think I'd have come out of it without clonazepam. And I've got to now strike that, because what clonazepam does to me, as I've said before, it doesn't soothe me out of a panic state. Well, it does increasingly as I get panicky, but what I've used it mostly for historically is to unfreeze me so I can function. But my trauma is very much in my stuff and packing and moving and dealing with my stuff. And the reason for that is because I've done it so many fucking times when I've been in a stress breakdown, or I've been in other extraordinary stressful situations where I don't know where I'm going to be living. And so dealing with my stuff is a very, very, very legitimate form of trauma, because that's where my trauma is seated, having to move out in a great hurry by people who have no authority to make me move, but have corrupt legal officials behind them. So I'm going to be making complaints, and it's going to be kind of arduous, but it's going to be courts and tribunals. And I'm going to see if I can get into the civil enforcement side of things, because civil enforcement and then the level up, which is bailiffs and fines. It's called fines, but it's bailiffs as well. The bailiffs and the fines people, they just have to follow the court order, but they I've encountered very sympathetic, like the bailiff that these fucking crooked bitches got. He had heard it before and he was really sympathetic, and he said, unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about it. And so this is something that I'm going to be raising at some point in some legal category, where these bitches are going on and on about how they evicted me, but what they don't have on their side is the moral truth and the actual truth of the situation. So the bailiff knew that he didn't have to evict me, but he said, I'm really sorry about it, and that's why I'm giving you the most, I'm giving you the most time possible, and I'm not going to get on your case until this time, because I was already moving out, and these bitches broke and entered into my home on my last day. Which was not even the day that we disagree about. It's the day that the last day of the tenancy according to their fraudulent eviction. They broke and entered, and they left my bathroom window open, leaving my stuff unsecured. And I had this on ring cam, and they turned my ring cam around, which is I think that probably will come under the criminal category of interfering with a computer system, because it was facing my front door. It's my property. I wasn't filming them. I'm allowed to, if someone enters my house against the law, I'm allowed to film them. So yeah, it's just so fucking wicked. And so the seat of their claims against me appear to be that I was a problem tenant whom they had to evict. No, I was an innocent tenant who got bullied and harassed out of my home by crooks who were standing between me and my legal rights, and lied their fucking asses off, hired a litigator to lie his ass off, appeared to have paid off or maybe just hit the jackpot with some fucking retarded adjudicators who broke criminal laws to approve the eviction. The two self-recused, pretty dodgy, huh? But no improvement in treatment of me. The third one came in. I recorded that whole session. Clearly I won, and yet he he granted them a possession order, which accounts to an eviction, which is different from just granting a termination. He granted them eviction. And this was, I had to, as I've said, I had to delay my movers booked for the day before the hearing because they would not adjourn the hearing for my termination for the reason that I said, well, I'm going to be moving out the day before, and they said that wasn't good enough reason. Have you heard anything more corrupt than that? I'm not saying have you heard of a worse impact on someone. I'm saying, have you heard anything more corrupt than that from a legal official? So I'm moving out. I've given notice, and I'm moving out. I have movers booked. And you're not going to adjourn the hearing about whether or not my tenancy should be terminated because you don't see, you're claiming that it's not a good enough reason to delay the hearing to terminate my tenancy when I'm got movers to move out the day before. Like, do you fucking believe that? And I have posted that to YouTube, and it's called Bendy Rex Woodhouse, if you want to look it up. Yeah, I kicked their ass on every legal point, and Rex was apparently amenable to everything I was saying, and he was being reasonably firm with Dominic Clapham, the fucking crook with a law degree and no legal skills. He was blustering and repeating irrelevant facts, and they got an eviction order for me when I had already given notice, and was trying to fucking move out. And yeah, and so you can and so I got, when I was in the process of moving, because I had to delay from the 5th to the 25th, and I was in the process of moving, and I was already staying elsewhere at that point because it was such a jumble, and Homewood and police had turned my municipal water off, massive offence. So I was quite relieved to be able to move to somewhere that I could have proper showers and flush the toilet and stuff. That's when they broke and entered into my house on the last day the last day of my tenancy. The eviction order had said, so they broke and entered, and they're claiming I was a problem tenant, and I'm paying them $8,000 or $9,000 back at $60 a week on court order for all sorts of fucking bullshit that the adjudicator has criminally ordered. I'm in social housing. I'm in not social housing. I'm in emergency housing. I am very badly cognitively injured. I am very physically unwell. I have no money. I have no support. I don't know if I'll ever have a home again. I've got no housing security. $60 a week is my food money. People are amazed, like social service providers are amazed that I can still buy a decent amount of food for $80 a week, which I've been doing since like 20, basically for many years, even though the consumer price index has gone wild with inflation and fucking everything that could go wrong. I can still somehow get it down to $80, and then you go down to $60, and that's my food money, and that's what I've got to pay these fucking creeps who owe me probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I now have to go to the food bank, and I'm probably going to go to the food bank every 7 weeks, like you're allowed to. It has to be every 7 weeks, and I choose my food so carefully, and I get food grants from MSD when they let me. When did the legal system lose the concept of justice? When did that fall out of the car? When did justice fall out of the car? Did anyone notice, hey, where's justice? We've got all these laws and shit. I thought justice was still with us. Just fell out of the fucking car on the motorway somewhere. Did someone push it out? I bet a judge pushed it out. Anyway, that's an hour, but I think it's highly relevant and it's made me feel better. So I'm going to work on clearing some of this stuff because I can't breathe in here.